I've always said the best way to end a perfectly good relationship or to ruin a perfectly good relationship is to move in with the person. I think that's because it boils down to communication. It comes down to the fact that we don't know how to talk to another person. We don't know how to take constructive criticism. We don't know how to give constructive criticism. We're always afraid that we're going to hurt the other person's feelings. And then if somebody gives us constructive criticism, then we take it the wrong way and we get offended. Welcome back to another episode of Sweat Talk. My name is Chad. Over the last several decades, we've for some reason normalized weakness. We almost even celebrate weakness. We tell each other that no, you're not fat, you're just big boned. We agree with people's weakness so that they feel better about themselves. Even though we know that being big boned, there's no such thing. You just have an extra layer on you. Even though we know that we're overweight, we don't want to hear it from somebody else. You know, does this make me look fat? No, it doesn't make you look fat. You're not fat, you're just big boned. Or, you know, I got fired from work and it's not my fault. Even though I'm late every freaking day, I don't ever get my tasks completed on time. It's my boss's fault. And then we'll tell each other that we agree with them because we care about them. We tell ourselves that we agree with that shit because we don't want to hurt that person's feelings. And then we celebrate that victim mentality. We celebrate that weakness right along with them. Instead of figuring out a constructive way to give that constructive criticism and be like, hey man, you need to change your shit. So, you know, when I was a homeless teenager, I had two very, very good friends that really cared about me. And because they cared about me, they were brutally honest. You know, they didn't allow me to be a victim when I was homeless. They didn't allow me to accept the fact that I was homeless, and they didn't allow me to believe that it was everybody else's fault but my own. And because they gave a shit about me, they came to me and they told me, both of them together, they came to me and they told me, Chad, you need to get your shit together. You're fucking up, man. And I knew it. I absolutely knew it. There was no denying it. But in my mind, I wanted to deny it. And in my opinion, those are true friends. You know, I could have taken that criticism and been like, screw you guys. I'm never talking to you again. But in reality, it strengthened our relationship. And I ended up getting my shit together. That was the kick in the ass that I needed. So I was the go-to guy for parties. People would send a message to my pager. Even though I was homeless, I washed dishes at work at Red Lobster. That was my first real job, right? I could afford a pager, but I couldn't afford a place to live. I could afford to go party, but I couldn't afford to put a roof over my head. And eventually that led to me losing my job as well. But if it wasn't for my friends that came to me and gave it to me straight and said, you know what, dude, you need to figure something out because you're going down a dark path, man. If it wasn't for them being brutally honest with me, and open in me receiving that constructive criticism properly, I would absolutely not be where I am today. When I was 265 pounds, I was 80 pounds overweight. If I wasn't brutally honest with myself, or hell, even my mother-in-law, she was an amazing woman, but she would give it to you straight. She did not beat around the bush. I'm sure quite a few of you guys can relate. You know, the older generation, they didn't screw around. They handed it to you. Hey man, you're looking kind of fat. And we can't say that to each other anymore. We get offended, right? We get offended. We show that weakness. We demonstrate that weakness because we get offended. And then we get offended, so we're not able to talk to each other. And that's one of the key ingredients to having a healthy relationship, to building a strong bond, is open communication. Now, I'm not perfect at this. This is something that I have to work at, and I think that's why a lot of you guys relate, is because the topics that I discuss are real world. You know, they're things that I struggle with, and I'm not trying to hide some bullshit so that I can get more clicks, get more views, whatever. That's not what I'm about. That's not what this channel is about. But taking that constructive criticism, even in our marriages, right? It's easy to get complacent and not pay attention to it. And forget how important it is to have that communication. But you know, sitting down and talking sitting down and communicating with one another. That's how you're going to keep that communication alive, keep that relationship alive, is actual communication. So there's no way that I'm an easy person to live with. You know, my wife, she's absolutely amazing. I've been married for over 24 years, going on 25. And I say that because I'm an extreme person. I'm extreme on both sides, right? Like, when I'm up and when I'm moving, I'm moving. I burn the candle at both ends, but when I crash, oh my gosh, I crash. I always take everything to extreme. I struggle to find that balance that I talk about. But I talk about that balance because I'm not perfect. And I know that that's one of the things that I have to find. I know that finding that balance, I understand the importance of finding that balance. But that is one of those things that I struggle with. And if it wasn't for open communication, there's no way in hell that my marriage would actually make it as long as it has. Being roommates with somebody, without open communication, you're going to trash that marriage or that relationship. If you have a roommate, roommates are one of the toughest things to do. I cannot have roommates. I've tried it many times, and every time the relationship ended like shit. But I look back on it now and I see the flaw. I see the reason why that relationship ended the way that it did. I see the reason why there was a breakdown. I understand what happened, and it was lack of communication. And it's because we're celebrating each other's weaknesses. We're not giving each other criticism. We're not giving each other constructive criticism. You know, like I mentioned my mother-in-law earlier, when she was brutally honest with us, with me, it wasn't facetious. It wasn't cold-hearted. It was actually out of concern. You know, Chad, you're looking kind of fat. You know, I mean, she would just give it to you blunt and straight. And that was one of the things that I loved about her, was there was no beating around the bush. You knew exactly where she stood. And, you know, I do my damnedest to give information that same way. But a lot of times people don't understand that it's actually good-hearted. You know, that criticism, the critique, it's actually good-hearted. It's not to be malicious or mean, but it's because the fact that we need to stop celebrating weakness. We need to give it to each other straight. We need to be brutally honest with others and ourselves. And we have to stop celebrating this weakness, you know? People call it fat shaming, you know? It's not shaming, it's being honest. If you're fat, you're fat. If your nutrition sucks, your nutrition sucks. You can tell me all you want that the reason why you're overweight is because you're big boned or because of your thyroid. That's not the case. It might make it harder to lose weight, but then when we're sitting down at dinner, you're gonna eat a salad in front of me, and then you're gonna go home behind everybody's back and you're going to pig out on a half gallon of ice cream. And if you wanna ask me how I know it, because I used to do the same damn thing. Yeah, I'm working out, I'm eating healthy. I don't know why I can't lose weight. Bullshit, man. But what I found is when I was being brutally honest with myself and with the assistance of my mother-in-law, I was actually able to look myself in the mirror and own the lies that I was telling myself. You know, I'd sit down at dinner and I would eat a healthy, nutritious dinner. I'd eat a bunch of meat and you know, like a salad or whatever. And then for my coffee, I would pour like, oh, what is that, International Delight? I'd put like 2 cups into 2 cups of that nasty ass syrup into my coffee and pretend like I was doing something right. Meanwhile, there's you know, 5,000 grams of sugar in that 1 cup of coffee, because it was more like a 50-50 or a 60-40 or a 70-30 mix, right? It was almost all International Delight coffee creamer. And then you've never seen anybody get down with a tub of ice cream like me. I think ice cream is probably one of my biggest weaknesses. I know one of my brothers can attest to this, my brother Eric. You see him show up in the comments, he'll definitely vouch. You've never seen anybody get after a tub of ice cream like me. But to the general public, you know, my coworkers or my friends or whatever, I'd be like, yeah, man, I'm working out all the time, and I was. I'm eating healthier, and I wasn't. And instead, I was just getting after it. You know, I would go home and sit down with my wife in front of the TV or whatever, sit on my ass, and you know, I would just start plowing in the ice cream or the pie and ice cream. I was thinking that I could outwork a piss poor diet. I did not put nutrition at the forefront of actually losing weight or gaining muscle. I thought that it didn't matter. You know, it was dirty bulk, right? That was the only way that I used to bulk. That was the only way that I knew how to bulk. When in reality, if I want to bulk, all I have to do is eat more of the same and work out. I don't even believe in working out heavy. I do not lift big. I just eat more. I work out the same way, and I eat more. And I will put on a metric shit ton of muscle. I will put on a metric shit ton of weight. In a good way, though. But we need to be brutally honest with each other. We need to teach ourselves how to take constructive criticism, how to listen to somebody else's concerns. I think this is one of the biggest breakdowns of marriages, is definitely lack of communication. But roommates is the same way. Best friends, it can be the same way. We don't communicate with each other. We just kind of willy-nilly think that for whatever reason that the relationship is always going to be there, and it's not. So one of those friends that I was just talking about, he won't. I don't know what it is that I did, but obviously I did something, and the reason I don't know that is because there was a communication breakdown somewhere. There was a misunderstanding that wasn't discussed. And this was one of my lifelong friends. This was somebody who I traveled all over the state with, rode mountain bikes with. The state of Arizona, we rode just about every single mountain bike trail in the state of Arizona in one summer. He was one of my best friends. But there was a communication breakdown, and that bond broke down because of that communication breakdown. The three of us, we were pretty much inseparable for decades. And it's extremely disheartening because those relationships, those are, how you can just randomly come up with a bunch of hatred for somebody who you've spent your entire life with, and the hatred that can be developed for God knows why, without any communication. We're afraid that we're going to offend another person that we care about. We're afraid that we're going to say the wrong thing to that person and hurt their feelings. But there's also a better approach. It's the perspective, right? Because our perspective is our 100%. Our perspective is our reality. And it's not easy to change our perspective. It's not easy to see somebody else's point of view, somebody else's perspective. If you are struggling in a relationship, how do you get that point across to the other person on the other side, and to understand your perspective or what you perceive? Oftentimes we're closed-minded. We don't want to hear constructive criticism. We think that we're in the right. You could do something small in your friendship or in your marriage or in your intimate relationship, and you have no idea that you even did anything. But that's where the communication is key. And then how we receive that communication, how we receive that information of why or what it was that we did that broke down in that relationship. That's what's important. Not getting offended because we pissed somebody else off. I spent most of my life pissing people off, being an asshole, and it was never intentional. It was just a defense mechanism. And I know that a lot of you guys use the exact same defense mechanism, but there's strength in doing that because we're not hiding from anything and we're not celebrating weakness. In fact, we're demonstrating and we're celebrating our strength. Because when we're strong enough that we can be the bigger person in the relationship and be like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Or we can go and ask somebody in a polite manner, what's going on? Why are you feeling this way? And then when they tell us, we don't get offended. That's tough. That is extremely difficult because we don't want to admit that we even did anything wrong to begin with. Because, like I said, our perception is our 100%. We perceive that we didn't do anything at all, whether it's intentional or unintentional. If somebody gets upset with us, there was something that we did. We need to learn how to be constructive again. We need to learn how to be blunt. We need to cherish the relationships that deserve our attention. The shit is not easy. It is really difficult. It is extremely hard to do. Because, like when we do something stupid, we aren't going to perceive that we did anything wrong whatsoever. And then to us, whatever it was that we did wrong, it could be minimal. It could be tiny. But then those tiny things turn into big things, and before you know it, there's an explosion, and then the most valuable relationships that you ever experienced or in your life, they're gone. And it's because there's a lack of communication. Now, some relationships, they do have their time, right? They do have their limits, and they do have their end, right? There is an expiration date on some relationships. In some relationships, they can be rebuilt after that. Sometimes people will come back around, they'll learn, or their perspective will change, and they'll be like, damn, dude, I don't know why I believed more in what the TV told me, or what the YouTuber told me, or what the politician told me. You know, because there's a problem in the country right now, or in the world, I should say. There's a huge divide, you know, and I'm not going to go on a political rant, but there's a giant divide that's being forced upon us between political parties, and it's horseshit. It's absolute horseshit. It's unnecessary. But lifelong relationships are being completely destroyed because of that big black box on the wall, or what that political talking head told us. For some reason, we believe that political talking head actually has our best interest, and we'll go along with that fucking party and completely disregard a lifelong relationship, a marriage, you know, a friendship, co-workers getting into it, people that you've known for decades, and before you know it, the relationship's over because of some piece of shit on the TV who you don't know, you don't give a damn about, and who doesn't give a damn about you. There's a communication breakdown that we all need to recognize. We need to change our perspective. So if you made it this far, do me a favor and go down in the comment section, write that word perspective. Because everything is perspective. Us as a society and society as a whole has been taught or brainwashed and programmed to close off our minds and to not accept the opinions or the viewpoints of the people that are important in our lives. Instead, we get it from that fucking black box that's bolted to the wall with those worthless ass talking heads inside of it. We're stronger together, and we need to change our perspective. We need to open our minds back up, open our eyes up again, and start seeing each other's perspectives in a positive way. And that's why I asked for these short comments, because that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to change our subconscious mind in a powerful way. They're going to help us reprogram our subconscious mind in a positive perspective to see things in a different light. We need to help each other open up our minds again. We need to be able to learn. We need to learn how to offer our perspective to those relationships that actually matter in our lives, and strengthen those bonds instead of just shutting them down for God knows whatever reason, for God knows whatever made up fucking reason. Then these short comments, they help the channel grow. Because every time the algorithm sees somebody like, comment, and subscribe, then it's going to be more likely to push this content out to somebody else who might find value in it as well. So with that, that's all I got for today, guys. I want to thank you guys for all those super thanks that you keep giving me. You truly are blowing me away with those, and I appreciate the hell out of them. I want to thank you guys for showing up. I hope you guys are showing up for yourselves, and I hope each and every one of you has a wonderful day. Peace.